I feel like an alien. I've heard those exact literal words from more INFJs than I can count. I've heard them in person, I've heard them in coaching sessions, I've heard them in my classes, I've gotten emails with those words in them. I feel like an alien. I've also heard variations on that. I don't belong here, I don't belong on this planet. I'm so different, right? When we feel this way, and many INFJs do, this is a really fundamental part of the INFJ experience, unfortunately. When we feel this way, we start telling ourselves a story about how we are the outsider. Now, a lot of times, especially when we're young, this story is true. We may have not been popular in school, we may have been bullied in school, we may have felt like we never fit into our social group or our family. We might have been the black sheep in our family, which many INFJs are. So when we're young and we tell ourselves this story, when we look around and see this and notice, oh, I really am the outsider. I really do feel very different from my social network, my family group. This is real, this is happening. It can actually be validating at that time because we're recognizing our difference. And this can also even be helpful up into young adulthood when we're really forming our sense of self and our identity and we are acknowledging, oh, I'm very different from other people. I see this. It also might give us a push to change things. So a lot of INFJs have told me, I felt this way in high school, I felt this way in college, I felt this way as a young adult, and this was the push I needed to leave. I left my hometown, I went to a big new city, or I went to a different country, right? I relocated somewhere very far away. Or I left behind a toxic family unit, right? Like I estranged from my family, I stopped talking to them, I realized they were very dysfunctional, and I cut off contact. So this can fuel positive changes in our life. It's not always a bad thing to feel like an alien or to really tune into that story and connect with that story that we are the outsider and we're so different. The problems for INFJ personality types happen when we carry this story with us and we don't let go of it. And we carry it on and on through the years into adulthood and beyond. Now, of course, we are still very different from most of the population, no matter how old we are. That probably won't change. That part of the story is most likely still true. But when we tell ourselves that story of, I'm an alien, I'm so different, I'm the outsider, I'll never fit in, it triggers certain emotions. It triggers loneliness. It triggers a feeling of isolation. A lot of times it triggers a feeling of rejection because it's a story of how separate we are from others. And it's a story of how no one will ever understand us. So it has this feeling of impossibility about it, right? Like no one will ever get me. No one will ever understand me. It's hopeless to even try. There's no point in even attempting to connect with others. That's when that story stops being helpful. Because in order to live a fulfilled life as an INFJ, we need people that we truly connect with. And we need people who we can share our true feelings with. That's very important to INFJs. We also need to express ourselves creatively. And that doesn't mean that we sit in a little room by ourselves, very isolated, and we write things down and shove them into a drawer. We want to paint things and write things and make things, and we want to share them with the world. We want to share them with other people. We need to feel appreciated as part of a community, a real community where we feel that people see us, we feel that people hear us, we feel acknowledged, and we feel appreciated as part of that community. So none of this stuff can happen if we're constantly telling ourselves the story that we're an alien, right? That we don't belong here, no one gets us, no one will ever understand us. Because the unspoken story underneath that story is that no one will ever love us. That's what we're really saying when we're saying, I'm an alien, no one gets me, no one ever will get me. We're saying, no one will ever love me. We're telling ourselves, I'm unlovable, and it's impossible to connect, right? It's impossible for me to connect with others or for others to connect with me because I am inherently unlovable. Now, this is not true, and it's only holding us back. When the story gets to this point, it's outlived its usefulness entirely, and it's just blocking our way forward. So what we need to do is start examining our stories that we tell ourselves. And if we're an INFJ, We especially need to examine the stories we tell ourselves about our INFJ-ness, as I like to say. And there's tons of stories that INFJs have that most of the rest of the population doesn't. So we need to really look at our stories of what does it mean to us to be an INFJ? What are the assumptions that we've made about being an INFJ? What are the overgeneralizations we've made about being an INFJ? What are some of the statements that we think are applicable to all INFJs, right? Or anyone who's not an INFJ couldn't possibly understand this about us because we're an INFJ. That kind of stuff we really want to examine and say, is this actually true? And is this actually helpful to me? This story of my INFJ-ness, is this moving me forward or is this blocking me? So we really want to look at all of the different beliefs we have about how different we are in the world. And we want to tell the truth about those stories. If they're working for us, if they're not working for us any longer. If this video was helpful to you, please like, share, subscribe. That stuff really helps the channel. I really appreciate it. Please also subscribe to my newsletter. I send out tons of stuff, writing, creativity, personality theory, intuition, crazy woo-woo stuff on occasion. I send out all sorts of things, classes, courses, books, fiction, nonfiction. So please subscribe to the newsletter. It's the best way to keep in contact with me, and it's the best way to stay up to date on all my offerings. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next time.